Welcome to the Intermetrics Podcast, Part 4 for the IMX process. By now, we've gone through the education-based marketing background that we recommend here at Intermetrics. We have talked about steps 1, 2, and 3 in the IMX process of the 5 steps. Step 1 being the executive discovery, Step 2, the diagnostic stage, and Step 3, build. So by now, we've talked about how to get yourself out there in the marketplace, how to make you seem like an expert or be the expert in certain areas, more niched than not, preferably. We have talked about how people will have found your information interesting. It's resonated with them. It touches something in their organization that they're worried about. They've contacted you after a seminar. They've responded to an email. In email to you for something. But anyway, they've come to you and you've come to them in a networking event, and here you are sitting with them in the executive discovery session. By now, you've done the diagnostic stage of either a business health checkup or one of the other early stage profiles, an attribute index, maybe a team interview, and you've got the results of that back. You've met with your team, you've built your team, you found another 1 or 2 consultants in your IMX community that specialize in areas that you think are also important to the solution for this specific client. Now you're ready to go back and present that information, and you've done that. You've given them your recommendations, you've met as a group, and you've signed the engagement. So congratulations, by this point, you actually have the signed consulting engagement, and here we're going to talk in Step 4 about deploy. Nothing terribly proprietary to Step 4, to Intermetrics, that is, but like we've said about the whole Intermetrics process, it's cobbled together, it's a composite, it's an aggregate of all of the different best practices we've seen many of the different consultants that we've worked with utilize to make their practices the successful practices they are. So we're going to go into Step 4 here, rather short step, but this step's about deployment. It's about pulling the trigger on the actual consulting engagement you've managed to sell to your client at this point. What kind of gun that trigger's attached to depends on the actual problem or work to be done, but that's not our focus here. This chapter's focus is to be looking at the standard rules and tips that will help you get to that point, to the point where you're delivering superior service when you do a project, and how to protect yourself in that process as well, and we'll explain that in a little bit. These are meant to be very generic tips, and since every engagement will be unique, obviously you'll have to adapt these accordingly. Below are some best practices. These are ones that we've picked up from some of these best consultants we've talked about. So, review them, take a look at them, let's give them a try. On the areas of delivering superior customer service, what actually constitutes superior service? Everyone wants to pride themselves on their service in the consulting profession, but that desire is often unsupported by definitions of exactly what constitutes outstanding service. We've once observed a consultant network assuring a possible prospect that the consultant service was better than anyone else's. The other party said, "Really? How do you know that? How would you demonstrate that your service is indeed worthy of paying a premium for, better than anyone else's? After all, if your fees aren't commensurate with such superb service, then what's the point?" Let's put ourselves in the client's shoes for a minute. How would we know that service is top drawer? Well, one of the ways is response time. I would receive return calls back from you at a minimum the same day that they were made, that I left them for you, or first thing the next morning if I called you late in the afternoon. At best, you'd return my calls within a few hours. Email responses would always occur within 24 hours. So it's response time, ideas around that. How else would you know that service is top notch? Second way is deadlines are honored. Reports, suggestions, responses, anything else requested would be delivered in worst case on deadline, and in best case, considerably before that. Keep that in mind. Worst case, they're delivered at the deadline. Best case, considerably before. This includes last-minute requests and short deadline requests. In other words, if you've agreed that you can do it, you do as promised. I've never have to follow up with you to attain an unawaited document. Number 3, a third way to do this. You make me a priority. You don't take my calls on a cell phone forwarded to me while you're in an airport or, heaven forbid, working with another client. I never feel rushed or taken for granted or patronized. I have your undivided attention. While I know you can't be available whenever I pick up the phone, I expect that when we do connect, I will not be competing with your focus on other areas. A fourth way to provide top-notch service. Your support functions are professional. If I talk to your assistant, answering machine, or even voicemail, I'm treated with respect, and I don't have to be bumped around, jumping through different hoops, pushing a bunch of different buttons, trying to get in touch with you. I don't want to listen to the same 30-second commercial for your services every time I call simply to leave you a message. Your assistant never slaps me on hold and doesn't mispronounce my name. Your letters and emails are error-free, and electronically, everything you do is compatible with your own platforms and applications. These are professional aspects. They're not ideals. These are minimum thresholds to be achieved. Another way to deliver superior service? I perceive trust and candor. You don't add to my problems, and you candidly inform me when something has gone wrong, including my own behavior. I know I'm going to hear undercurrents of discontent from some staff members who may feel threatened by you, but I don't expect to find any substance behind it, such as evidence you were taking sides in a turf battle. You have my trust, and I must have your trust in this relationship. Another way to convey and deliver superior service: you respect our culture and operation. You've taken the time to learn about how we operate. That way you don't make unreasonable demands and commit silly mistakes. You pay for your coffee. You park in the correct area. You observe office policies, and you request expense reimbursements commensurate with the situation. For example, if our own team flies coach and takes taxis, that's the level of reimbursement you request. What's another way to provide outstanding service? You're proactive. I periodically receive, as your client, articles, ideas, references, and other resources that are non-promotional, they're not sales pitchy, but they're clearly a benefit to my company, position, or life. You provide more than I anticipate, and your intent is clearly to ensure that my needs are exceeded, not merely just met. Superior service is a wonderful differentiator because it requires no capital investment. It's often easier for a small firm or solo practitioner to enforce than it is for a larger, more bureaucratic organization to maintain. Your service level may well exceed the same 7 that I've listed above. The key is to be able to articulate them and extend them to every prospect and client. High service levels always assist the perception of value, so they need to be manifest from the first point of introduction to a prospective client. Let's talk a little bit about some proven methods to increase and or protect your profits. We talked about protect early on here. Look at some of these. Look at the IMX process guide. These appear starting around page 24. You'll be able to see these in list order, but let's just walk through some of them. Ways to increase or protect your profit margins. Number 1, work together with the client to let them establish value collaboratively. Okay, we talked a lot in the IMX podcasts that you may have already listened to about if the client makes the statement, it's gospel. When the client says it, it's gospel. Have them establish value collaboratively. In other words, work with them. Don't come in and assume, here's the proposal, here's what we think we can fix, here's what it's worth if we can reduce this or increase this. The more involved they are, the more value they'll deliver, and the more secure or protected that value is. Number 2, always base your fees on value, never tasks. Okay? There's an old story about a consultant who gets called to a manufacturing facility, and the manufacturer is down. Something's broken, and the line is stopped. And there's $50,000 a day being lost in this manufacturing plant. They call the consultant. He shows up the next day, walks into the building, looks around, pulls out of his bag a piece of chalk and a hammer. Walks over to a valve, puts a big X on the valve, takes the hammer, smacks the valve really hard, and all of a sudden this big shuddering and clanking and spitting, and all of a sudden the machinery starts coming back to life. Everything starts running again. Week later, the manager gets the invoice from the consultant, and it's for $50,000. The manager goes through the roof. $50,000? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. You were only in here for 30 minutes. How can you charge $50,000? So the consultant revises his proposal or his invoice, and it says the second invoice reads, chalk, $1. Knowing where to place the X, $49,999. The idea is it's not what you do, it's what you provide in value. It's not tasks. Okay? So keep that in mind because it's very easy to create proposals and pricing schemes around deliverables like profiles. When we're dealing with Intermetrics products, it's easy to get sucked into, I'm going to charge you this price for every report you use, not factoring in the value that you're delivering with that report. It's one of the reasons why Intermetrics charges so much for our products, because we recommend that you charge that much for your products, your delivery of our products, because you're the value add. You're the one that's allowing them to use it. If we were just selling tools on a website straight to companies that didn't require any interpretation, they'd probably go for pennies on the dollar compared to what they're paying now, because the value it lies in you helping them understand it. Always base your fees on value, never tasks. Number 3, never itemize unless you absolutely have to. That goes back to as well, number 2, price for value, not materials. Very rarely do you ever have to itemize. Government contracts or maybe some large organizations. The moment you're asked to itemize, you need to start asking if you're positioning yourself correctly, because you may be looking at a commodity broker. They may look at you in that light. Number 4, never use time as the basis of your value either. Okay? Always set deliverables, and we'll talk more about that. Number 5, start with what they want, but then extend the engagement by determining what they need. We talked a lot about people don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. We also talked about how the best extend the engagement by staying up at the top level with the executives, by becoming the business advisor, and by not delivering an event or an engagement. Well, this is one of the key ways to do that. Start with what they want. Barriers to entrance are much lower. They'll buy it. Once you get in and the relationship is established, start showing them how they should want what they really need, if that makes sense. Step number 6, or item number 6, think long term. Real revenue is cumulative, not situational. Same thing we were just saying. An event is not going to create significant revenue. Those we talked with, the best consultants that worked with our stuff, when we talked with them, they get the most reward out of clients that last for years. Not a 6 month engagement, not a 3-month engagement. Number 7, never voluntarily offer options to reduce fees. Just don't do it. No explanation needed. Just write it on your wall as you walk out the door in a big sign, never voluntarily offer options to reduce fees. Number 8, at a premium if you personally have to do it all. In other words, if you're advising things or people or teams, wonderful. But if you're asked to get involved in doing it all, they want manuals printed up, they want writing, they want graphs. I mean, just one example, they want CDs. You're burning the CDs. A lot of you are small business owners. I know that. You're burning those CDs. You're printing the labels. You're putting them in. You're shipping them. Just one example, but when you have to do it all at a premium. Number 9, if you're forced to consider fee reduction, if they really, really put you up against the rope, reduce value as you reduce fees. Highlight that. If you must reduce fees, reduce value as you do. Do not cut price without taking something off the table. Here are A, B, and C, Mr. Smith. They're sitting on the table. They cost X, Y, and Z. Together, your proposal is here. If he doesn't want to pay that, then say, well, if you can't afford that, I definitely understand and appreciate that. Let's take Y off. And then that drops your price down to this. Is that in a range that you can afford? Do not start discounting. Okay? It's very hard to do, but when you find that you can do it, when you find that you're confident in the value of your deliverable, when you find you can stand there and somebody says that's a little expensive and you can answer, I know, and stop talking at that point, you will find that this is the absolute easiest way to make sure and protect those margins. Number 10, provide options every time the choice of yeses. In other words, just giving them one option will increase the chance that they're going to ask for a reduction in price. Give them multiple options. Each one of them, of course, reduces value, but here's some variety. You go out to buy a car, they do the same thing. Okay, let's learn from the billion-dollar companies that spend millions of dollars to understand sales psychology and buyer psychology. Going to buy a car, they give you the base option, and then as the value increases, the price increases. If you don't want that value, or if you don't want that price, you watch them take the value off. You don't get the premium wheels. You don't get the sunroof. You don't get the leather. You don't get the navigation system, the GPS. They give you options, though. Don't give them too many options. That's another item in here, but nobody wants to walk into a store to buy a pair of jeans and find there's 300 different kinds of jeans. Sometimes you just want a pair of jeans. But it's nice to have 2, 3, maybe 4 options. Limit it, but definitely don't make just one. Number 11, as early as possible, ask the key scope question. What are your objectives? Goes back to number 1, work together with the client to let them establish the value collaboratively. If you've asked them in the very beginning, what are the objectives, and continue to do that, why are we here? What is it you want to accomplish? What is it you would like to see? Envision yourself standing in that place where you are going to get with our help. What's it look like? When you do that, you again keep their mind on the value and why they're doing it. Otherwise, they end up oftentimes looking at an invoice going, wow, this guy's charging us an awful lot of money. Don't look at the money, look at the value. They won't forget the money, just if they're looking at the value, then they can compare the value and the money. They have a context. If you've delivered superior service and a superior product, obviously there won't be any issue there. Number 12, ensure that the client is aware of the full range of your services. This is a nice way to grow your profit. A lot of what we talked about is protecting income and prices. This one is a nice way to grow those prices. Many times consultants, 95% or more of the time, their growth is only through referral. And we often see that a lot of the times clients don't push all of their stuff in the field. They don't let everybody, by push into the field, I mean they don't let everybody become fully aware of all the things they can do. They're afraid it's sales pitchy. You can find subtle ways to do this. There can be information that can be written up that just has a one-page, very nicely crafted PDF that goes over all of the different aspects in a very nice, talkative way. Not, you can bullet list the thing out and just put down, here's some areas where I can help. And make sure that they know that's there. Make sure they see that. A lot of the times, the reason I'm saying this is a lot of you that I talk with are afraid of doing that because they're going to sound sales pitchy. And there's obviously this aversion in many of you to be a salesman. You're not having to sell it as much. Just make sure they know what's available. Okay? We'll talk in other IMX podcasts about actually selling. Number 13, if someone is not on your playing field, subcontract. Never, ever, ever turn away business. We talked about this in multiple podcasts so far as well, earlier in the IMX process, as a matter of fact. If there's an option for doing some consulting practice in the financial realm and you're a sales marketing consultant, find somebody in your IMX network who's a finance guy. Never, ever turn away that business. Doesn't mean you have to take it on personally and pretend to become the financial expert. When you're playing the role as business advisor, you're mentoring that entire organization, if you will. You will go out and find the right person who's going to come in and fill that role. You're the subcontractor for the house. But don't ever turn it away. Okay? It really, really does hurt your relationship with the client, believe it or not. It definitely won't grow your prices or your margins. Number 14, always ask yourself, why me? Why now? Why in this manner? It's a nice way to kind of get out of the box. It's easy to get to lose the forest through the trees, so to speak. You get into the engagement. You had your sales hat on. You had your advisory hat on. But just the deeper you get into the engagement, sometimes your perception can lose sight of the forest because you're tracking down one particular path. And to avoid getting that tunnel vision, it's nice to stop and ask yourself every once in a while, why me? Why now? And why in this manner? Just a real nice spot check. Number 15, know how many options the buyer perceives other than you. Again, good way to step out of the box, keep sight of the entire forest, always asking yourself in an empathetic way, put yourself in the shoes of the others, just like number 14. Number 16, use proposals as confirmations, not explorations. Old sales mentality, very tried and true. Proposals are just for the end stage, not an exploratory stage. Once you put it in writing in a proposal, it strictly or severely limits or restricts your ability to adjust down the road. So if you're still in negotiations, you're still putting value on the table or removing value from the table, having a proposal out there gives them a nice gauge and a starting point, and it definitely limits the ability for you to adjust that proposal down the road if those negotiations happen to adjust a lot. So talk about what you're seeing. Don't formalize them in any sort of a proposal. Formal proposals should only happen once, and they should happen after all of the variables have been determined. Number 17. When asked prematurely about fees, reply simply, "I don't know yet." As long as all those variables are on the table, it's very hard to make any kind of a statement about what fees look like. One way to get around this, if you can't avoid the question, is to give examples of other engagements that you've delivered. Highlight the value of those engagements, not the pieces of them, not an itemized expectation. Highlight the value, and oftentimes you just have to leave the client hanging. They can't get a final price or a real gauge on the price until they decide what it is they want. If they really have to have a price, make them commit on the value that they want delivered. Number 18, do not accept troublesome or unpleasant clients, no matter how hungry you are. This is a tough one. When you're starting out, when you're hungry, I've been near bankruptcy several times. I have a second mortgage several times. I started my own company. Trust me, I know what it means. I've started a couple of startups, and they've both run through profitability. I know what it's like to be beginning and hungry and needing that client. It's very easy. I've done it myself, and I've learned not to now, to say any client is money. Any business is money. Troublesome, difficult, and unpleasant clients will not pay in the end. You will exert more energy than you can get back in value. I've even said, you know what, but I'll get referrals. They'll give me referrals to others. Well, what I've found is that they only refer you to other troublesome and unpleasant clients. So as hard as that is, just don't do it. Number 19, seek out new business opportunities laterally during your projects. It kind of goes back to number 14 and number 15. Always keep your head up. Okay, don't get head down, lost in the trees. Always keep your head up, looking for other opportunities, because lateral expansion from within the operations that you're already delivering are the easiest way to grow your profit margins. There are much fewer barriers to entrance. The threshold is much lower. You're already in the engagement. Creating a whole brand new engagement requires starting over again from the beginning of the sales process. Look laterally to what you're doing and see if that same value can be delivered to more people in the organization, other aspects of the organization, or there's things that feed into the deliverable you're supposed to be giving them that are not included, and see if you can expand that to be included in the proposal that you've got already working. Number 20, is it better to do something pro bono and protect value, or it is better to do something pro bono and protect value than to do it for a low fee and erode the value perception? We do free things all the time. We give you complimentary products because it's nice to be able to go in and show them. Oftentimes more difficult to market or sell something than it is to just demonstrate it. As crass as this is, there are many out there that talk about the crack sales method. In other words, crack cocaine is a drug worldwide that you're all probably familiar with, but many times the dealers on the street give the first one away because they know it's so addictive that they'll want to come back for more. Horrible as that is, it does play on a lot of the psychology of sales. Many times we know that with these intangible aspects, demonstrating the value is the easiest way to let them appreciate and understand that value, as opposed to giving them a flyer and a brochure and a bunch of copy and words. When we do that, however, we recommend that you don't charge less for it. You give it away free, a complimentary, a pro bono. But you must, when you do that, highlight the value of that. You must say, this is a $500 value. I'm going to give you the first one for free because we appreciate the potential for business and we want you to understand what this value is. It's very hard for you, the client, to understand and appreciate fully how powerful what we're going to be able to do for you is unless you actually witness it. That said, I will only do that once for any organization. And when I do that, I will make sure they understand the full value. If there's anything in writing, any invoicing, any proposals, it has to list two things. One, pro bono or complimentary, but two, and highlighted, the actual value of that. They must appreciate what that value is. That's better than going ahead and discounting it over a long period of time, because then they're going to expect that as the new value mark. When you charge them for it at a discounted price, they think, you know what, he gave it to us at 50% off. Psychologically, that's a big difference than it's worth $500 and he's letting us have the first one for free because of the potential in our business. Better than giving them the first one or two or five at a 50% discount. That sets the value of that product at $250, not $500. Number 21, fees have nothing to do with the supply and demand. Again, only with value. Simple and sweet. No real explanation needed. Don't itemize those proposals. Don't talk about hours. It talks about what the value is you're delivering. If you are number 22, if you're unaware of current market fees, you're undercharging. Okay? Know what your clients are charging, know what the competition charges, and make sure that you know how you measure up against that. Personal belief on this, always charge more than everybody else. I know it's easy to say that, but we have a great consultant, $1 million consultant internationally, who quadrupled his prices one year, and he thought he would do this to reduce the numbers of clients he had, give him an excuse to get rid of those that were unpleasant, that he didn't like working with, the troublesome clients we talked about a few points ago. And what happened is that worked. He did get rid of several people, but he didn't get rid of as many as he thought. And I'm talking quadrupled his prices in 1 year, okay? I think it was in 1 quarter. Just times 4, everything. People started coming back to him and saying, wow, that's really expensive. And the only thing he recommends anybody say in response to that, we've mentioned it earlier in this podcast, is, I know. And with conviction and value, he understands and appreciates that it's more expensive and it's worth it. Okay? Know what your clients are charging, or know what your competition is charging, know what the market fees are, and if you're not aware of that, you're probably undercharging. Number 23, a continuation of that, psychologically, higher fees create higher value in the buyer's mind. Outside of the higher value we know you're going to deliver, the simple fact that you're applying higher fees to it makes it more valuable. Just common sense, if I have a $1,000 a month coach versus a $250 or a $300 a month coach, I'm going to believe that the $1,000 a month coach provides more value. Number 24, value must include subjective as well as objective measures. Simply put, make sure that you're getting their buy-in on what it is they want to perceive that value to be, what is going to mean to them in their emotions, in their opinions, in the lack of stress in their life or their operations, in the joy of improving properties and performance and qualities and shareholders, whatever you're working on. Get those emotions, those feelings, these subjective aspects tied into the measurements that you're pointing to when you talk about value that you'll deliver. Number 25, introduce new value to existing clients to raise fees in these accounts. So you have an existing client, you're delivering an existing deliverable to them. It's hard to go back to increase those fees. Like we talked about in one of the previous bullet points, if you have to reduce fees, reduce value, well, unfortunately the same is true for you. Unlike the example I just gave, where we didn't talk about he quadrupled his prices, he did also add new value. He started spending more time with those individuals, not 4 times as much, but he started adding new value. He had some new methodology he was bringing out to the field. So the same is true. If they want you to reduce fees, they must reduce value. Here, in this point, if you want to increase your fees, increase new value. Back to 24, highlighting the subjective aspects of that value is one way to do that. Number 26, at least every 2 years, consider jettisoning the bottom 15% of your business. Okay? Trim the weeds. The bottom 15%, if you look at them, require more time than they're delivering in value. What could you do with that extra 15%? If you could put a top client into that 15%, the same time you're spending with those, how much more value would it be? Number 27, start with payment terms that are maximally beneficial to you every time. Okay? You may end up taking them off. You may end up reducing. You may end up spreading them out over a longer period of time. But don't start in the middle. Start with a proposal and your discussions on pricing with the most optimal options for you. Start in writing with the payment terms you would love to see. You always can go back as to what something might be that's better suited for them, but don't start in the middle and assume, well, I would love to have them pay it all up front right now, but I'm going to assume they don't want to do that, so I'll make a proposal that talks about spreading it out over 3 months. If you would love to have it start with payment up front right now, start there. If they ask you to back up, you can always do it. Easier to take more hair off when you have a haircut than to try and add it back on, if you ever heard that. Number 28, offer incentives for those one-time full payments. Back to 27, if I start with the optimal payment options that are great for me, and I'd like them to stick with those, but I'm going to consider other options, go with the ones that I want and offer some incentive for taking that. When we talk about certifications, we offer more value to those that pay up front. We provide more complimentary credits, for an example, for those that pay up front in one time as opposed to spreading it out over 6 months. Number 29, similar to ones we've talked about, just restated in a different way, focus on improvement or the benefits, not on problem solving or activity. Again, you're delivering value. Notice that the most common theme throughout this entire piece on protecting and increasing your profits is value, value, value. Not activity, not hours, not pieces or products or parts of a deliverable or reports or numbers worked with. It's value. So here we're talking about focus on everything you do with improvement. That's benefit. That's why they want you. They don't want to pay for somebody to come in and be active. They may have a lot of employees for that benefit. They want somebody to provide value, and that value is a benefit, the improvement. So don't focus on activity. And finally, number 30, always be prepared to walk away from business. Again, we've talked about some other things throughout. This is a reiteration a bit of that, but always the ultimate end of having those difficult and awkward clients or trimming them the lower 15% every 2 years is be prepared to walk away from business, even with prospective business. As it looks like it's not going to go your way, if it looks like it's going to be difficult, even if you're hungry, even if you've got space, walk away from that business and be prepared to do that, okay? You demand value, you deliver value, so demand that value yourself. Demand the respect, demand your prices. And it's easy to say, I know, and difficult to do when you get into that mode of get the business, get everybody. And when a new client's standing there ready to give me 70% of what I want as opposed to 100 or 50%, that's better than nothing. In most cases, it's not. Okay? In most cases, you've set your prices accordingly because the value you deliver. Taking business that doesn't go in line with that undermines your value to other clients, undermines your security and confidence in the prices and the value you deliver, and locks in a client that's likely going to use more time than you think is worth. So be prepared. That does it for part 4 of the IMX process. Thanks, and we'll see you on part 5.